Welcome to On Point. I'm your host, Roger McConnell, and I'll be here every other Tuesday at 1 p.m. with topical shows addressing the needs and concerns of military veterans and active duty personnel. I'm going to do a little background information before I introduce my guest today, talking about a young sailor in World War II. And as the story continues, after boot camp, Calvin went to Pearl Harbor, where he was assigned to the USS South Dakota. They were soon in the South Pacific. During their first battle, Calvin's gun crew accounted for 7 of the 26 enemy aircraft that the ship shot down, and Calvin received 2 Medals of Valor. The ship's captain subsequently received a letter from the Navy Department stating that Calvin's mother had written a letter to them saying that Calvin was only 12 years old. My guest today is Dwayne Anger, who is an 11-year member of the Veterans of Underage Military Service, who will provide an eye-opener about this story and other such men and women who were underage at the time they entered military service. Welcome, Dwayne. Thanks for coming today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, can you go on with the Calvin Graham story a little bit?
Certainly. See, this executive officer on this ship mentioned to this young Calvin Graham, 12 years old, and he told him, he says, I don't want a young kid on my ship, especially when underage. So they threw him in the brig. Well, this kid, he finally got out of the brig, thanks to a senator from his home state. And it took him 20 years after that, when the war was over, before he got his medals back, and he never did receive his Purple Heart. And this is what they used to do to these young vets. They would take them and give them a court-martial if they confessed to being underage. So now we have an organization just for them type of people.
And once again, state the organization's name, Dwayne.
It's called Veterans of Underage Military Service.
Okay. Now, how many total men and women throughout, or do they suppose, were qualified VUMS, as you call them, VUMS, the acronym for Veterans of Underage Military Service people? How many were there?
Well, approximately 200,000 in World War II and Korea combined. The total membership, starting with number 1, is about 3,900 total, and that we have 1,400 perhaps still alive today. Now, this is men and women both. The men's age would be those under 17 years of age. In other words, 16 and under. And for the women, it would be age 20.
Now, these were the requirements when they went in, when they signed up. And people lied about this, lied about their age in order to get in.
That is correct.
Okay.
They lied. Some of them just lied. They took a birth certificate and shifted the dates on the birth certificate, or maybe got some little wino, give him a couple of beers or a bottle of wine, and he would sign off as their father or something. And some of the recruiters would just say, hey, you don't meet the standards because you're underweight, excuse me. And so they'd say, fill up on bananas and come back in about an hour or so. And that way they could meet the weight requirements. And most recruiters were that very good about that. They let the people get in, even though they knew they were underage.
Now, why do you suppose a lot of these kids, including Calvin Graham, 12 years old, it's like, what recruiter would have looked at him and thought, this guy is minimum age for entry into military service? But why were these people doing this? Why were they signing up?
Well, you see, when World War II started, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. It was a kind of a thing with these people, patriotism, I guess you might call it. And because they're all flag wavers. If you ask them why they did this, would they do it again? They say, absolutely, I'd do it again anytime, boy. And but like this Calvin Graham, he came from kind of a broken family. His father was abusing him, knocking him all over the place. So what he did was he got somebody to help him get in the service and everything, and without his mother's permission, really, just to get away from his home. Now, as far as myself is concerned, I went in at age 16, and the reason I went in is partly patriotism, another is because I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Really, I didn't know what was ahead. I didn't have a chance to go to college. I didn't have the money, and I wasn't that, I didn't think I was that smart. In fact, my grades didn't show it. So anyways, it's kind of a dare. I went in with 2 kids who was 15. They never stayed in, but I did.
Now, where were you living at the time when you joined up?
I was in Kalispell, Montana. I was a junior in high school.
And you're still there.
Yeah, I'm still there. I came back in 1993 to Montana because, after my wife passed away. But anyway, this great organization, we have, like I said, like ladies, we got 2 or 3 young ladies who was 14 years old in the WACs in World War II. Now, most of these girls, ladies, they probably won't be around much longer because most of these women, just about all of them, came from World War II. So you know they're in the mid to late 80s at least, maybe in the 90s.
Exactly.
So they're not going to be around much longer.
Right. Now, when did this stop being a problem that people could get in early? They're obviously they do a lot better job at checking and validating people's ages now.
Well, people have gone into the military service in the U.S. since the Revolutionary War. There was kids 10 years old or younger. And the Civil War, the same thing. They call it the War of the Young Kids. And in World War I, by the way, we have a member. He was the oldest living member of World War I. And he died at about, I think he was 107 years old when he died. But he was one of our members. And he went in because he was a broken home. But a lot of people in World War II, there was a Depression era. I mean, there were a lot of broken homes, no family life.
Well, the Depression was, they were kids of the Depression then, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would imagine a lot of the girls went in for the same reason that you said about John or Calvin Graham.
Oh,
that,
absolutely.
They were being, tough home life or abusive fathers, stepfathers, whatever.
Absolutely, that's correct. And these ladies are lovely ladies. I mean, every one of them are just so cheerful and everything. You wouldn't believe they was in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, boy. Now, once again, you said you have how many members of this Veterans of Military, underage military service? How many nationwide, did you say?
There's the numbering system were approximately 3,900. But out of that 3,900, there's still only about 1,400 left alive. You must remember that most of us are in our 80s, and I'm telling most of us, and some in our 90s, and then some in our 70s. So it won't be many years before we won't
now, how
be
many
around
members,
much longer.
Excuse me, how many members do we have in Montana?
We have, at the present time, 9 members.
9 members.
And I'm always looking for more. I hope there's somebody out there listening to that wants to join our organization.
Well, we'll talk about joining it a little bit later, and I think hopefully we can find you some new members. Now, you mentioned all of your membership is in maybe late 70s, 80s, and 90s. What happens when everybody passes? What are you going to do for a membership then?
Well, just recently we changed our bylaws. Before that, it had to be an honorary member or an auxiliary member or a legal member of joining the service underage. But we changed our bylaws so that sons and daughters and spouses can join our organization as honorary members. They do not have the voting privileges, etc. But this organization will still live on with that type of personnel. And maybe the national meetings will still be going on, but it'll be the sons and daughters and spouses of our active members.
Now, of the VUMs, VUMS, who qualified for membership, did you have any prominent people, famous people that joined the military when they were too young?
Well, you might say there's some prominent people, yes. We had 2 U.S. congressmen, at least 2. There was more than that actually joined the service when they were underage, but they didn't join our organization. We also got 1 4-star admiral. Unfortunately, he deceased. But we do have a 4-star general. And that 4-star general went into service in 1939. He was 15 years old. He went in World War II, and he made first sergeant of this company when he was only 17 years old.
First sergeant.
Probably the youngest first sergeant in the Army at that time or any other time. And then he got a battlefield commission because he got wounded a couple times in action, and he also got quite a few medals from this thing. He rose through the ranks. He stayed in. Was a second lieutenant for a while. Then he went to Korea, and he commanded the company there in Korea. Went from there to Vietnam, and then he went into as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, can you imagine that? A 15-year-old kid joining as a buck private, right, going through the ranks, coming out as a
First
chairman
sergeant,
of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
That's amazing.
4-star general. And then we also had a 4-star admiral. Of course, he's, like I said, he deceased. Then we have 2 Medal of Honor winners.
Okay. Do you remember which services they were in?
One was in the Marine Corps, and the other one, I believe, was in the Army. Yes.
Oh, boy. Not many of those guys around. Medal of Honor is... They don't call it that for nothing.
This one gentleman, a young guy, he went in when he was about 15, and he actually went AWOL because he wanted to get in the action. So he went on this ship, and his cousin was on his ship, and his cousin hit him in a boat. And then they found him, and they took him to the company commander, and his company, or rather battalion commander. And this commander looked at the kid, and he says, "How old are you?" And he says, "Such and such." And he says, "Why you go AWOL?" And he says, "Because I want to get action." And the commander says, "Son, if you want to get action that bad, you can stay in my outfit. I don't care what age you are."
But he stowed away on the boat.
Yeah.
That's crazy. There was a famous Montanan who was a VUM, right?
Mike Mansfield, he wasn't a member of our VUMs, but he joined the Marine Corps, can you imagine, in World War I at age 14. Then he went into another service at age 15 when the war ended, and then he was in, I believe, in the Navy.
Oh, it was World War I? He was...
World War I, yes. He was 14 years old. And we got his story in our book, one of our books, and it's kind of great that he would give us permission to publish that story.
Well, that is
well,
incredible.
He's a pretty famous man, Montana.
He was a hard driver later on, so that man had some power. I'm talking today to Dwayne Anger, who is an 11-year member of Veterans of Underage Military Service. Dwayne's from Kalispell, and thanks a lot for coming in today to join us here, Dwayne.
Well, I thank you very much for having me.
Well, let's talk about some other stories of some other famous VUMs or some other people who have incredible stories to relate.
Well, there's one gentleman by the name of Bob Brandt that I know quite personally, a very nice gentleman. He went in the service when he was 16, the first in Marines, in the Marine Corps. And he was in Guadalcanal at 16 years old. Then he was telling me, he says, I was on Iwo Jima, and I celebrated my 18th birthday. And man, he says, you can't believe the fireworks going off celebrating my 18th birthday. I mean, this is the kind of guy he was, see. He went through, like I said, Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima. He was the only one in his company that came through unscathed. He was not wounded once.
Well, that's a nice
Guys
distinction
next
for
to
him.
Dying off like fleas. I mean, Guadalcanal was horrible. So was Iwo
Iwo,
Jima.
yeah, both of them were.
Yes.
Okay, well, tell us about somebody else.
Well, let's see. How about this one character? He's from Missoula, Montana, in fact. He had 40 mules in Italy. And they had to use the mules because they couldn't get the jeeps up to the mountains areas with no roads. And they just had very minimal trails. So to get supplies, ammo, and everything else up to these people, they had to use mules. So he was a mule tender. He had 40 mules under him. And it was amazing to talk about this guy, about his stories. His name is Hayes, Bob Hayes. He's right out of Missoula, Montana. Nice gentleman. I get a kick out of talking to him.
Now, who are some of the other Montana members?
Well, we have one gentleman from Belgrade, one colonel from Bozeman, one colonel from Lakeside, south of Kalispell, one from Lewistown, one from Toston, and that's about it. And that's myself. I'm the state commander of Montana. I am also what they call a mountain regional commander for the VELMS organization. I have Montana, North and South Dakota, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona under my command.
Well,
that don't make me any better than anybody else, but it's kind of funny. Buck Sergeant,
busier.
Buck Sergeant is the regional commander, and I got colonels and generals under me.
All right, a little
It's
turnaround. That's fair. Now, you have reunions and different get-togethers during the year, nationally and statewide?
Yes, Roger. We haven't had one statewide in Montana yet, but we do have a national meeting every year in April. The last one was in Lafayette, Louisiana. The year before that was in Nashville. We had one not too long ago in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and also in Salt Lake City. Now, those are in April, usually about 3 days. They're very good meetings. Everybody just wonderful. And then we also have yearly, in October, we have what they call Western Mini Reunion, and it's been held in Laughlin, Nevada for the last 12 years. I've been attending that for the last 11 years. And this year it's going to be in Las Vegas.
A good opportunity to get down there and...
Darn right. You want to have some fun and gamble
Party,
and
get it
have
on.
a meeting at the same time, there's your chance.
Okay. While we're on the subject of the organization, it's a nonprofit. Do any of the officers get paid for doing the things they do? Do you get paid?
Absolutely not.
Nothing.
I don't expect to get paid.
Okay.
I love my job.
There are no people in your organization who actually draw a paycheck then?
No, we have a national commander, and he's voted on by the membership. And everything that he does, all the time he spends, and everything is not paid for. That's it. He does it because he loves the organization. We have a national vice commander. We have 5 board members, the national board, and then we have a treasurer and a secretary, and it's all just bylaws according to the nonprofit organization.
And how many attend the reunions? Well, we didn't get to that, I don't think.
Well, we have a little better than 100 every time at the national meetings, and I think that's pretty good when you talk about a bunch of 80s and 90-year-olds.
Sure. Well, if they're as spry as you, I would think there would be 1,400 of them who would attend.
But our founder, his name is Alan Stover. It was kind of weird. See, what happened was that I told you about this Calvin Graham getting court-martialed in town in the brig. Well, after the Vietnam War, a lot of these Dodgers that went up to Canada and elsewhere, they got amnesty from the U.S. Congress. Well, this made a couple of our people kind of angry, and Alan Stover took it on himself to go to these various units in the military service. And he told them, he says, look, you got on your books that these veterans that joined underage can be court-martialed, stripped of the medals, and pay back all the benefits, GI Bill and so forth, that they received. Well, that isn't right. So they all said, fine, we'll change the regulations except the Coast Guard. And that was the unit that he joined when he was age 15. So he went and got a TV crew and came back the next day to the headquarters in Washington, D.C., of the Coast Guard, and he says, look, fellas, he says, I got a TV crew here now. And he said, I'll tell you, I was in the Coast Guard when I was 15. Now give me a court-martial. So you can imagine the shuffling and everything else when they finally decided, well, I guess we don't want a court-martial. I guess we better change.
But a lot of people were treated unjustly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Too many. It isn't fair.
They did reverse that, though. They did give them their benefits and their due.
That's actually what I say that Alan Stover did. Every one of the organizations, see, prior to World War II, they made it on the books of every military organization, Army, Navy, Air Force, Army Air Corps back in those days, and the Coast Guard and the National Guard even. And those people had it on their books that they could court-martial anybody that went in underage, yes. But when the Alan Stover got to them, they changed it, and now it is perfectly legal. You don't have to worry anymore, fellas and ladies.
Well, I'm aware of at least one person here in town, in Great Falls, who, I don't know all the specifics, but it sounds like he was one of the people who was treated unfairly, and they didn't give him all the years he was entitled to on his retirement. He had to stay in for 22 in order to earn 20 or something like that. They discounted some of his service years.
Well, Roger, that isn't correct. I mean, that can't be. I think if he would call me, that gentleman would call me and give me the circumstances, what happened. My phone number is 406-755-4294 in Kalispell. Also, my email is mtvums vums4u@gmail.com. Of course, that's Montana Vums for you, say.
Right. Well, let's hope, and at some point a little later, we're going to talk about joining membership.
Right.
And maybe he would like to join the organization. And
I hope so.
Yeah, it sounds like he was treated unfairly.
It's not too many years to go, fellas. You got to get on an organization.
That's right, too. Now, while I was doing a little reading about this, seems like I saw 2 or 3 people who had joined early, way before their time, before they were legally able to join, in World War II, and then they later were in Korea, and then later in Vietnam. So you've got people who were in 3 wars.
Oh, absolutely. We got this 4-star general.
He was in 3, but yes. There were others too.
Yes, there's a 4-star admiral, Boudra. He was in all 2 or 3. He was in Korea, World War II, and I believe he was in Vietnam as well. And he was on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, by the way, also.
Do you have any more stories of anybody else who comes to mind about VUMS who had an exciting ride or some great experiences in the service?
Well, we have this young lady I know quite well. She went in the wax at age 14, and she went overseas, and she got at different places overseas. And it was really strange. She met this guy, and he was also in the service, and I think he was a colonel. They got married, and just recently, the poor guy passed away. He was in his 90s. But this is one little gal, and it's just, these are beautiful ladies, I tell you. I can't believe it.
There was a lady lives in town here who was 90 some odd, and she was in the Coast Guard in World War II. saw a German U-boat off the shores in New Jersey, as I remember her telling the story.
Well, I have one more.
Sure.
One more story, and
We've
that's
got
about
time.
This older gentleman. He was a World War I vet. In fact, he was the oldest living veterans of World War I. He was 107, I think, 107 years old when he passed away. That guy was a member of our organization.
Yeah. Well, good. Tell us more about him. We've got some time here.
Well, his name is Frank Buckles. And I got pictures here. It's really interesting. In 1917, age 16, when he joined the service. In 1920, at age 19. 1960, he shows as age 59. And 2006, he was age 105. And he was buried in the Arlington National Cemetery because he was the oldest veteran, living veteran of World War I. And I think that's pretty neat. They had a full military funeral for him, services in Arlington Cemetery. And another good friend of mine was State Commander of California. He passed away last year, and he's also buried in Arlington Cemetery. And we have other members that were buried there. In fact, like medals, like the 2 Congressional Medal of Honors. Many of our members have a Distinguished Service Cross, a Distinguished Service Medal, Bronze Stars, Silver Stars. One guy had the Purple Heart 6 different times. 6. A couple of them had as many as 5. And Purple Hearts are just like a dime a dozen in our organization. These people really had a lot of guts. For 15, 14, 12-year-old kids, you couldn't believe the guts they got. And what they did was, those that stayed in rose through the ranks. They took the schooling and everything else. Those that got out, most of them had the GI Bill. They didn't have any type of schooling before. They didn't know what they was going to do. But they took advantage of the GI Bill, and they went to school. Now we got professors in our organization. We got PhDs, guys that went through school to get PhDs and doctors. And they teach people that, that they had the time, they went to school and didn't go into service. They're doing that now.
Right. Well, they had some great studies and education in the service, a lot of them.
Yeah, that just proves, see?
Sure.
They weren't dumb. They just quit school early. That's
right.
all.
They just weren't as good at
In fact, I got my
education.
high school diploma when I was 79. The state of Montana made a law that if you joined the service underage and didn't get a high school diploma, you could get it from the Department of Education. So I got my high school diploma. That was after I got my GED and after I went to college and got my degree.
Well, good deal. We're going to have to speed it along. How about joining? If somebody out there is listening to this and they want to join, how do they go about doing that? And how much does it cost to
Please, have them join an application that they can get from you. I give you a copy of that application.
Okay, or the website. How about the website? They have that application on there, don't
that's www.oldvums.org. And also the telephone number here at the national office, 1-888-653-8867. Also, get a hold of me if you, in the state of Montana. I'm always available. I got a message machine, and I can call back to you as soon as possible if you're interested. $25 lifetime membership. Now, that ain't
There's
bad,
a deal.
That's
for sure.
That ain't bad at all. So, please, give me a call or give that organization, oldvums.org, on the email, or give them a call there at 1-888-653-8867. And my phone number, 406-755-4294.
And once again, that email is www.oldvums.org. Dwayne Anger, thanks for coming in. I sure appreciate your being here with me today.
Thank you for inviting me, Raj.
On Point continues to air every other Tuesday at 1 p.m. on Montana Public Radio, KGPR, Great Falls. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future shows, please contact me, Roger McConnell, at 406-799-6709 or an email onpointkgpr@bresnan.net.